Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. The message from President Obama tonight is likely to be that the U.S. is going on the offensive against the terrorist group, the Islamic State, also known as ISIS. The president is expected to outline a broad military strategy to include airstrikes in Iraq and, for the first time, in Syria, and that he's put together a coalition of the willing, including Jordan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. We get more now from our Washington bureau chief, James Blue, who is in D.C. James, good afternoon to you. What is the president going to outline tonight? And with the people of the country probably already behind him, the polls seem to suggest wide support for some sort of action. Who does he have to convince?
Well, really, what the president is going to do, Andrew, is sort of talk about the ISIS threat. He's going to outline sort of the ways in which Americans and people around the world sort of really need to fear and take notice of this group. This is a group that he called the al-Qaeda JV team a year ago. So he really needs to sort of lay out what exactly has happened and evolved over the last year to really make it now an effort that requires the U.S. basically to go back to war against this terror group. He's going to sort of lay out his plan to actually strike at ISIS inside Iraq and inside Syria. He's going to talk about the coalition that he's trying to form, and he's really going to sort of mobilize and sort of catalyze and activate the growing U.S. support for some action against ISIS so that they can actually move and do something in the coming weeks.
Is there a sense that the president needs to lead the nation here, or that the polls and the nation have sort of led him to this point?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. And really, as you can remember, the impact of the beheadings of those two American journalists, that really sort of captivated people and has really forced the president to act in much faster than he probably had planned. But in addition, ISIS has done so much over the summer, it's now impossible not to do something. And so that's where the president is.
So now the question is what role Congress has here. Two parts to this. One, will the president seek congressional authorization when it comes to airstrikes in Syria? And second, does he think he needs to?
Well, he believes that he already has the authority to do exactly what he wants to do. In speaking with administration officials, they think some of the past congressional approvals gives him the space to actually do exactly what he wants to do. Because this is an expansion of an existing war, he is going to want to get some type of support from Congress. Having said that, he's not going to say he's going to only act if Congress gives him permission, because he doesn't want to tie his hands, but he does want some type of congressional endorsement. However, I am certain from what everyone's saying to me, he will act without it.
Yeah, and is there concern because of when he went to Congress over Syria, and after all the tough talk leading up to Syria, and then his hands sort of got tied?
His hand got tied, but I think what they would sort of point to, they were then able to rid Syria of chemical weapons. Certainly, Syria is it's not solved. It's actually more of a failed state. But what they would sort of point to is, yes, our hands were tied, but we did sort of move the ball down the road a bit, and Syria is less of a threat because it's absent of chemical weapons.
We talk about this coalition of the willing that will include Jordan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. What will this coalition of the willing actually be doing? And from what we understand, the president even spoke to the King of Saudi Arabia today.
Yeah, the president spoke to the King of Saudi Arabia, basically trying to get other Sunni Arab states, which Saudi Arabia is, on record willing to oppose ISIS, really trying to talk through the way ISIS is a threat to Saudi Arabia as well as it is in Syria and in Iraq. What the coalition is going to do, they're going to offer some training. They're going to arm the Syrian moderate opposition. They really are going to try to create the space for the Syrian opposition to come together and to get training, to get weapons, and potentially do something against ISIS and Assad.
Okay, James Blue in Washington. Of course, Arise News will have live coverage of the president's speech beginning tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern here on Arise. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
The markets gained on Wednesday following the largest decline in a month for the S&P 500 and as oil prices continued to tumble. Here's a look at the final numbers. The Dow finishing up 54.84 to 17,068. The S&P 500 clawing its way back to that 2,000 mark, up 7.25, and the NASDAQ up 34 and change to 45.86. Some of the top stocks we're watching today: Microsoft reportedly in talks to acquire Mojang, the privately held Swedish company that makes the popular game Minecraft, for more than $2 billion. The deal would give Microsoft a large stake in the gaming world, as the app is one of the most popular for mobile devices and computers. This would be Microsoft's first multi-billion-dollar acquisition, up 8 cents. The battle between Dollar General and Family Dollar heating up. It's becoming a hostile takeover after Dollar General took its $80 share cash offer for Family Dollar directly to Family Dollar shareholders. Family Dollar closing up 28 cents and Family Dollar closing at 78.86. Taking a look at commodities: gold closing at $13.50, and oil pulling back again, down 94 cents to 91.81. It has been on a slump now for about 6 weeks. Applications for U.S. home mortgages fell last week to the lowest level since December of 2000, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. Demand fell 7.2% for the week ending September 5th. And the Commerce Department saying wholesale inventories rose by only 0.1%, the smallest rise since July of last year. While stocks did rebound today, equity investors are getting a little skittish about interest rates once again, with new rumors suggesting that the Federal Reserve may move quicker than expected in raising rates. Ebong Ecker, author and international business consultant, joins us from Washington, D.C. Ebong, how are you doing, sir? Welcome.
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where is sort of this news of interest rate hike coming? Because when you look at everything going on in the world, you don't get the impression that they really could raise rates right now.
That's true. Well, the Fed's been saying earlier that they don't see any change in the foreseeable future. However, the Fed talked about actually changing that language, and so that's what's gotten everybody up in a bunch and worried about actually them increasing the rates and eventually that hitting the stock market.
Because you look at the ECB in Europe cutting rates to basically zero. You look at unemployment rate here, maybe an aberration because all the analysts got it basically wrong, so they have to kind of say that. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of fire that Janet Yellen could use to raise interest rates, and this may give her some cover to be more dovish for a while.
Exactly. See, the unemployment rate has been teetering about 6.1, 6.2 for a while, and despite an increase in industrial production, there's actually consumer sentiment still is kind of shaky and cautious. So that in and of itself is causing Yellen to actually pause and not really think about raising the rates.
Yeah, and certainly it's not just the unemployment rate itself. They want to see some wage pressure kick in, don't they?
Exactly. And in addition to that, they also want to see payroll increase, lower unemployment rate, more jobs being brought into the economy. As well as, one of the bigger things that I've been seeing, and I'm even reading the Fed minutes, was they want to see more consumer confidence and small business confidence.
And and that's coming back slowly. What do you make of sort of this market sell-off that we've been getting? Is this heading towards this correction? Is it based on any sort of fundamentals? Is it because the world is a complete mess right now, or is it just people taking money off the table?
It's a little bit of all of those things. People are taking money off the table, especially with summer ending, us going into fall. But more importantly, a lot of the analysts are worried about what Yellen's going to do, only because they had mentioned that they're going to change the language in the next statement, that's September 17th. Mm-hmm. Now, Yellen had said previously that she doesn't foresee. She foresees they're waiting a considerable time after they finish the asset purchase program, which is set to finish by the end of 2014. And some analysts are also saying that it'll take another 6 months before they actually touch the rates. But with the change of the language, she may even do that sooner. Yeah,
and if they do that in the spring, that will certainly shock the markets. Ebong, let me ask you about Apple, because we've gone almost 9 minutes now without talking about Apple. So I want to throw it out there. Talk to us a little bit about how Apple Pay works, because of all the things announced yesterday, that really could be the game changer.
Exactly. See, Apple Pay, the interesting about Apple Pay is this, that it uses NFC, which is near-field technology. And that is a chip in a card or a chip in your Apple, I keep calling it the iWatch, but the Apple Watch, and an actual payment, a system in which you just tap or wave. But it only happens within less than a feet or so. So there's no way for information to be transmitted or to be stolen through transmission. In addition to that, you upload all your information, your credit card information, your payment information into Passbook application or Passbook app, and more importantly, iTunes or Apple through iTunes has over 800 million users with their credit card information in there.
We reported that yesterday. That is a stunning number. That's about 1/7 of the population of the world.
Exactly. So it made it easier for all the credit card companies to eventually actually partner with Apple. You kind of have to.
All right, Ebong, thank you. We'll have that chip in our brains at some point soon. Probably not that long from now. Ebong Eka, thank you so much. Coming up, what's the credit card industry to do? 20-somethings who refuse to get one. You're watching Arise Exchange. Informative. The U.S. economy is on the right path, and the wizard of the Fed is leading the way.
We started our companies originally to create something that made a positive difference.
Compelling.
I became very successful, not allowing myself to be average.
Our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reason. Yeah, he sort of lost all business. Investors came back from the long weekend, tanned, rested, and ready to buy stocks. Entertaining money daily, Arise Exchange. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. It may come as a surprise that nearly 2/3 of millennials who grew up with credit cards as a way of life don't have any. That's right. According to a new report, 63% of people aged 18 to 29 do not own a single credit card. Here to explain why is Jeanine, Skowronski, a credit card analyst with Bankrate.com. Welcome to Arise Exchange. Thank you for coming. This is a rather shocking survey when you consider when we grew up, we charged our way into debt. That was really the problem for people in their 20s. Why are so many millennials staying away from credit cards?
So for a couple reasons. I mean, regulation made it harder for anyone under 21 to get a credit card. It also made it harder for banks to market to that demo, so they can't show up on campus and be like, free pizza for a credit card.
I remember that. The second I got to college, they inundated you with credit card.
Right. They can't do that anymore. Plus, this is the first generation to really grow up on debit cards, so it gave them a plastic alternative that mimics credit cards in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you that. This doesn't mean they don't have debit cards, right?
They love debit cards.
Okay, they like debit, and they like debit cards because?
Because it's quick, it's easy, it's convenient, and they can't spend more than what's in their bank account.
How much do the credit card industry like debit cards?
Well, the credit card issuers, if they don't issue debit cards, they rather have people on credit. And credit card issuers want to lend to this demo, so this is an interesting stat for them.
But a debit card, many of the credit card issuers do issue debit cards?
Well, the banks do, and the banks have credit cards.
But they carry the MasterCard, the Visa logos.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what do you think might change that habit a little bit? I mean, the credit card industry sort of in a panic over this?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in the space. I think you're going to see rewards programs that aren't structured around rewarding you for purchasing. They might reward you for good spending behavior. So if you pay more than your minimum, you'll get rewards, or they'll pay you rewards off of what you pay off on your balance. So I think we're going to see them. I think it's good for consumers because I think there's going to be a lot of more competitive offerings hitting the marketplace.
And what does it mean, though, for retailers? If this age group doesn't have the use of credit, are they, in fact, buying less? Is there any evidence that they're buying less?
Well, I think we're going to see this demo start to move on to credit cards because a lot of them are getting ready to buy houses. Now they're starting to get cars.
Jobs.
Yeah, they're getting jobs now. The economy is improving. So I think the trend will change over time. So I think if issuers and retailers get smart and offer competitive offerings to this demo, they'll come back to the payment method.
How much is it that they don't have credit cards because they've been educated about the risk of credit cards? They have high student loans. They don't have high-paying jobs. They've seen their parents go through a horrible recession.
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of millennials, and they're extremely debt-averse. A lot of this is really driven by their desire to be financially responsible, and I think they either saw parents get in trouble or parents talk to them about debt differently post-recession.
Do you think that the industry then has to not only change the messaging to this group, but actually change the way they do business? For example, besides the high interest rates, the penalties that you face when you miss a payment, do you sense anything from the industry that it is going to be a little bit more friendly?
I think what may change is right now our credit scoring system is built on you need credit to get credit, and I think we might see banks and the credit bureaus look at alternative ways to measure consumers' ability to repay. So they might look at rental data and they might incorporate utility payments down the road. That's not the system now, but I think if this trend continues, it may be the system in the future.
And do you find those who have credit cards need to have them co-signed by their parents?
I think people should consider adding their millennial Daniel, as an authorized user to a credit card.
Why?
Because the authorized user gets all of the positive information associated with the account, but not the negative. The primary account holder is responsible for paying it off. So it's like a credit card with training wheels.
I like that. Okay, Jeanine, thank you. It's a very interesting trend. We'll have you back on soon to talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Time now for our business ticker, stories making headlines across the nation and the world. We have late-breaking news that is going to cause the NFL potentially some trouble. The Associated Press is reporting that law enforcement officials say that they sent a video of Ray Rice punching his then-fiancée to an NFL executive as long as 3 months ago. As you know, the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell has been saying that they had not seen this video that came to light earlier this week that led to the firing of Ray Rice and the suspension of him by the league for playing in the NFL. So this news continuing to develop right now. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is telling the EU to hurry up and get sanctions done. The leader of Europe's largest economy says the European Union should immediately implement economic sanctions against Russia. The EU agreeing to sanctions on Monday, but are holding off on enforcing them at Finland's request. The most widely anticipated public offering in America hit a major milestone. Alibaba's record IPO has enough orders to cover the $21.1 billion listing. No indication on the exact price or owners, since the details of the offering are not yet public. The official price of the deal will be announced on September 18th. And it seems everybody with enough spare cash for a mortgage is heading across the pond. A new study says London is the favorite place for multi-millionaires to have a second home. Wealth research firm New World Wealth found that there were more than 22,000 multimillionaires with second homes in London. Most of the homes are owned by Europeans and Brits who live outside of the city. However, many homeowners trek in from Asia and the Middle East as well. It is a serious problem that's costing businesses around the world billions of dollars in revenue. Depression. According to Mental Health America, it is the nation's most costly illness. Companies lose more than $50 billion in absenteeism from work and in lost productivity, and $26 billion in treatment costs. And as we recognize National Suicide Prevention Day, which is today, business strategist, entrepreneur, and author Jen Groover joins us to talk more about what companies are doing to combat the disease. Jen, welcome to Arise Exchange.
Thanks for having me.
For coming. You don't really think about this much in the workplace and the cost of businesses. Right. For the longest time, I imagine employers simply did not know how to recognize serious depression among employees.
Right. They were afraid to. It was that dark topic that everyone kind of pushed to the side and hoped would go away. But as we're seeing increased levels of depression and suicide, we know it's not going away. And not only is it not going away, it's something that has to be addressed because it's costing corporations billions of dollars. And
so if you're an employer now, what do you have to now take on to sort of be able to assess, employees who are the difference between just being blue and having a tough day at work and being seriously ill?
Well, I think there has to be ongoing workshops and education that's accessible for people. The workshops need to take place as an ongoing process that everyone is mandatorily has to participate in. But then there also has to be counselors on staff to allow people when they're going through a divorce or they just lost a loved one that they could go to, just like we did in school, having a counselor so that they can talk their problems out. Because we categorize, the unfortunate thing is that we categorize most depression as mental illness. Mm-hmm. So it creates a stigma that people are afraid to talk about. They think, oh, something's wrong with me. When in reality, most of depression is actually caused by emotional despair, emotional trauma. And that could come from divorce or losing a loved one or being bullied in school as a child and never dealing with it.
But I wonder, does emotional trauma lead to suicide? Isn't suicide largely, it could be completely wrong, a mental illness component?
No, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. A lot of emotional trauma can cause a cycle of depression that could then become worsened by addiction, can be worsened by food addiction as well, not just alcohol or drugs. And it can perpetuate and become a very deliberate cycle that allows somebody to see their worth diminish. And once somebody's worth is diminished, that's where suicide can actually come into place, where they feel like, why am I here? There's no reason. So most of mental illness is very much a chemical imbalance, where depression is, there's tools around depression that can help people understand that the way they're feeling, other people feel.
Okay, so
how to deal with.
Okay, so what are the tools employers need then to sort of identify this? Because first, it costs money. Depression costs money, just like any illness or any sort of issues going on with employees.
Right. So it needs to be an open conversation, first and foremost. There needs to be, as I mentioned earlier, education around this so that employers can identify when someone's going through a rough time, that it's okay. Everyone goes through a rough time. And that's the greatest part. Anyone who has tried to commit suicide has said, I just wish that there was somebody there saying, I feel that way too. I'm going through something similar. And so that allows people to feel safe to talk about it. But the thing is it's not just a chemical imbalance. It's things that can be controlled through meditation, through exercise. Diet is one of the biggest parts that causes people to feel depressed. If I eat a ton of sugar at lunchtime, I'm going to go back to my workspace and not feel
you ride that wave sort of thing.
Correct. And so if you can give people these identification things to look at, like don't eat certain foods.
So, you know, many employers already encourage their workers to go to the gym, for example. Should they add sort of this mental health component to it as well?
Absolutely. Well, most people talk about nutrition to lose weight. We have to be talking about things like nutrition and exercise to feel better overall, to have a greater sense of emotional and mental health, well-being. And that has to be a top priority, not as much as losing weight, because we're realizing that it's all connected. It's not separate. When you're overweight, you're obese, you're not feeling as motivated. And so therefore it causes a cycle of depression. And so if people can see these milestones and have a toolbox to use, and employers can empower people with this toolbox that somebody might not themselves at home personally, then they're going to have higher productivity, they're going to have a lower healthcare cost, and they're going to have a greater sense of community in their business environment.
Okay, Jen, thank you. An important day today to recognize it, but it's something we should recognize 365 days a year.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, would you pretend to be your dead twin to scam the government? Our favorite person of the day is next. You're watching Rise Exchange.
September 11th, 2001, America was attacked by terrorists.
My first impressions were like, where did two 110-story buildings go?
A massive rescue effort was immediately set in motion.
Hundreds of people frantically digging.
The ludicrousy of trying to remove that pile with a bucket.
We needed heavy equipment and people very skilled in moving the debris quickly.
Join us for the incredible untold story of 9/11. Don't miss our Rise special, Ground Zero, the Unsung Heroes.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
From Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
The first thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, not for the right reasons. Today, it is a Queens, New York man who pretended to be his dead twin brother for more than 20 years so he could collect $500,000 in government benefits. Prosecutors say Thomas Murphy, a New York City sanitation worker, posed as his twin brother Robert, who died shortly after being born in 1962. Posing as Robert, Murphy allegedly claimed he suffered from depression and qualified for his brother's Social Security benefits. He also received government housing grants and food stamps. Murphy even rented another apartment in the name of his brother, an apartment, you guessed it, paid for by the state. Murphy was done in by modern technology. When he went to get a new driver's license, facial recognition software discovered that his picture appeared on two licenses, his and his dead brother's. That tipped off authorities. In total, Murphy, who earned $80,000 a year hauling garbage, is accused of bilking the government out of $581,805.80. They have it right down to the penny. And he apparently got away with the fraud since 1994. Good job, New York, for figuring it out. And so Thomas Murphy, for his alleged morbid crime, is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, the worst speed traps in the nation and how to avoid them. You're watching the Rise Exchange. Last week on a Rise Exchange. Are you ready for some football? The NFL money machine gears up.
It's a dicey situation when you look at how much money is being funneled in and how much money they're taking.
There is a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russian separatists. They have stopped shooting at each other. We call that progress. The owner of the Java Jugs coffee shop has pleaded guilty to offering a daily dose of caffeine and sex, giving her customers a little extra jolt with their coffee. Watch this week for more. Arise Exchange. That place fell apart. Did you ever drive through a town, get a speeding ticket, but had no idea you were speeding? I did. Or at least I claim I didn't know I was speeding. Livonia, Michigan, Orlando, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Denver, Colorado, and Reno, Nevada are among the top places in the U.S. with what is considered the worst speeding traps. That's according to the National Motorist Association. However, experts say municipalities rely on these revenue zones to generate revenue. Robert Sinclair, Jr., is Media Relations Manager at AAA, and he joins us now to talk about this. Welcome back.
Sure.
Welcome back to the Arise Exchange, and welcome here, by the way. It's good to see you. You're not on the road today. Usually I have you on your cell phone while you're getting through the traffic. Are we seeing worse speed traps today than we used to because municipalities don't have any money?
Essentially, yes. We're seeing tax revenue. A lot of companies have fled the United States, and they leave behind towns that are struggling for revenue. And this is a quick and easy way to get money back, and unfortunately, it's happening a lot more.
But I would think that, you get speeding tickets because you're doing something wrong, and it's supposed to be punitive in nature. When did this become a revenue creator?
Well, probably from years ago. I mean, you can think about speeding traps going back to the 20s and 30s and 40s. But what happens is it's not that you're speeding, it's that the speed limit has artificially changed in a short space of
And Florida is
distance.
particularly bad at this. We've seen several towns.
Yeah, Waldo and Lottie, Florida.
Tell us about these towns.
Well, Waldo has 6 speed limit changes in the short space of its town. You're going from 55 to 45 to 35 up to 55 down to 45 back to 35. So it happens over a short distance, and what happens is there's intense law enforcement activity in giving out tickets. But what has come to light recently in Waldo, the chief of police and his replacement have been suspended because they were putting pressure on officers there to write at least 12 tickets per 12-hour shift.
Yeah, that's astounding. They raised, apparently they wrote $80,000 per officer worth of tickets a year or something like that.
Right, over $1 million.
Is it generally illegal for towns to have rapidly changing speed zones?
It's a gray area. I mean, the federal government has said that where a small town is controlling a major stretch of highway, they can't do these kind of things because there are safety implications. They will say that they're giving the tickets because of safety, but when you take the prevailing rate of speed and you suddenly slow it, and you have a sign that's hidden, perhaps, that creates more problems than it's solving. So the federal government has stepped in some cases and said that you can't do this, but in other cases, the state governments are going to step in, but it's still happening, unfortunately.
And what does AAA do about this? I mean, how do you get involved and lobby either Washington or the municipalities to change this policy?
Well, we notify our members, certainly, and we identified the 2 worst traffic traps that we thought were in the country, that of Waldo and Lottie. And certainly there are websites where members can go into.
Do you have a location, a database where people can be warned of this?
I don't think we have that, but the National Motorist Association has that kind of thing, and we've only identified these 2. But certainly, if we get complaints from our members, we put that kind of information on our website.
What I imagine happens here, too, is the people get trapped in these speed traps don't actually live in the town, right? So the political pressure to do something isn't there because the town turns around and says, hey, we're using this money to fix roads and stuff.
Yeah, but imagine the businesses in the town. If people are sent away because of this kind of activity, where folks say, "I'm not going back there anymore because I got this ticket," it negatively affects them. So a lot of time, businesses can step in, or motorists who have received these kind of unfair summonses can appeal to those in the population of the town to make some sort of change.
20 seconds left. If you get a ticket you don't like, how do you fight it?
Boy, it's really tough, especially if it's happening a long way from home. A lot of times you just have to wind up paying. A lot of times municipalities will say it's not going on your insurance or anything like that. You
Florida has a program where they say if you don't contest it, because I was there, you pay it and you take this online quiz about how to be a better driver. They don't, but it's all about money. I'm sure.
It is.
Robert, good seeing you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Tomorrow, Rise Exchange, it is the 13th anniversary of September 11th. We will have continuing coverage throughout the day here on Arise News, so we invite you to stay with us. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow.